on? It's Commander Morning. I'm Nick Baldwin. Jesse Nyquist is here with me, my co-host. And of course, we've got the Jerry Maguire of real estate on with us this morning. His name is Jason Abrams. Maybe you've heard of him. He's the head of industry at KW International. He gets to talk to Gary every day. That's basically his job. He gets to talk to Gary every day. He gets paid to have free coaching, like from the greatest mind in real estate. I love that. How do I get that job?
Nick and I are in competition for celebrity fanboyism. I'm winning, and you're awesome. Thank you for being here, Jason.
Yeah, it's funny. I did a thing with YP the other day, our young professionals group, and they introduced it as the Jerry Maguire of real estate. And then I watched in the chat log ceremoniously as everyone wrote, "Who's Jerry Maguire?" And I was like, "Oh my gosh!" But that was like 96.
There's a tweet going around on Facebook where someone said, "I really wish Twitter would allow you to play songs on your profile. That would be super cool." And people are like, the moment you realized that the new generation doesn't know what MySpace is, that's what you were going through at that moment.
Don't know. They really don't know.
I found myself in the first 20 minutes of that interview, I explained the whole movie plot line. I'm like, and then he says, "Who's coming with me?" And all these blank faces. It was awful.
Oh, that's a classic though.
Hey, how did you get that name though, the Jeremy? Is it because of your energy? Is it because
my mom came up with that? So I was doing this TV show. My mom has always seen more in me than anyone on the planet ever will. And I was doing this TV show with HGTV that followed me as I sold homes to professional athletes. And that
it's called Scoring the Deal, in case you haven't heard of it. It's on Hulu. You can go stream it. Make it number one. Let's make it number one on Hulu.
Right. As Brian Gubernick gets to say, we decide when Jason's no longer relevant, not them. But so I was on the phone and I was doing this interview with the New York Times. And you can, if you want to read it, it's still there. And I'm talking to the reporter, and my mom in the background, she yells, "Tell him you're the Jerry Maguire of real estate." And I was like, I'm the Jerry Maguire of real estate. And the next thing you know, that hit and that went. And then they changed the intro to that TV show to say that. And there it was.
No way. They did?
Mm-hmm. They did.
Oh, my gosh. Well, hold on a second. Jesse knows that I like to create T-shirts and just order them for myself and wear them just so I'm the only one in the world that has them. I'm going to create Jerry Maguire real estate T-shirts, and I'm sending you one.
I'd love to get one of those.
That is amazing.
Done. You've got a great T-shirt business. Great T-shirt business.
So Jessie has never met you before. She's got a bajillion questions for you. So I'm going to let her ask the first one.
Always. I need to ask. So I listen, I'm a student of everything. And so I love life, LYFE, live your future every day. Is that what it is? Yes.
That's it.
So it was 3 or 4 weeks ago that y'all were talking about the MREA, your favorite pages in the MREA. You talked about, starting on page 47, myth understandings, right? From a team leader perspective, I know it's a running joke, but it's different in Denton, but it's different in Grand Rapids, but it's different. So can you give me that myth understanding, how it pops up to you from the team leader role perspective?
I think in that book, the way that it was being written was remove the limiting belief that this won't work in your market. And that was kind of the concept. From a team leader perspective, I think it is different in your market. As a matter of fact, I think it's different in every market. And I think that those difference and those nuances is what makes every market special. But if you hearken back to page 6 of the book, you realize that real estate's a local business driven by local relationships. That's what makes it different, meaning the way that humans interact with each other is fairly the same no matter where you go. As a matter of fact, if you were to go and study the entire planet, you'd find out that even there's 6 facial expressions that we all understand, right? We have surprised and we have disgusted, and all of there's 6 of those that no matter where you go, you're going to find. And so anyone that said to you, no, disgusting looks different in my market. No, it doesn't. It actually does.
That's a good point. Universally accepted. Mm-hmm.
Right. What's different is what disgusts you. Which there's an amazing museum. It's the Museum of Disgust, where you can go, and when you buy your ticket, they give you a vomit bag because they know that some of the foods are going to disgust you. But by the way, those aren't the foods that disgust someone from that area. And you know this to be true. So where am I going with it? Take it back now to a team leader who sits there and says, well, wait a second. It's different in my market. Yeah, it's different in your market, but the mission isn't any different. How many people can you be a part of changing their life? And then here are the tools by which you can change it. And then all leadership is the same thing, which is hold people in reality long enough to appreciate their circumstance and then prescribe things by which to change it. Like, that's universal. This is why we sit here today and we talk about a book that was written, in 7 or whatever it is. And people say, well, take out the fact that it doesn't go into pay-per-click leads and take out the fact that there's not some internet stuff in it. It's still amazingly relevant. How is that possible? Mm-hmm. When you teach and when you think in universal truth, you never have to change.
Yeah, that's interesting to me. I've always wondered why, and it probably goes along the lines of, give someone an opportunity to bash KW, they'll do it. And MREA, by the way, is not a KW book. It was written by Gary Keller, but the only mention of KW is when he's actually talking about a KW agent. The foundations of building a business, no matter what decade or century you're in, don't change. It's just the tools that you use change. So, okay, let's say there's a section in a book that says, okay, we're going to, send 100 handwritten notes a week to clients, which, by the way, you should still do. I'm just using examples before technology. Okay, now maybe you would send a social media message, or it doesn't matter. Just get that thinking out of your mind and then think, okay, what tools do I have today that were the equivalent of those tools, but the foundation's still the same. You still build a house the same way. You still make a car the same way. There's just new features that get intertwined with those older, with what they did back, before they had that technology, if that makes sense.
So can I ask you? I know volley taking turns and asking questions. Sorry, Nick, but I've got to ask you. I've got 1,000.
Ask away.
So we talk about Jason Abrams in our market center. We love to listen to you. Number one, we think that you need to have a bell every time you drop a nugget, like you just did. Just a bell, so someone knows to record it and write it down somewhere. That's all you need is a bell. There's so many. But
hold on. Before you say that, Jason, remember during family reunion, people were like, wait, Jason didn't say anything memeable.
Yeah, that was getting those text messages. That's the craziest thing. We wanted to make a bell so that every time Cody Gibson launched a new expansion location, it would go off. And then the bells, we had to remove the chime because they were just ringing all the time. Yeah. I don't know. And now you're seeing that like across the country. I mean, I don't know if you guys saw, there was an article in Inman the other day about one of your expansion teams that has 400 people now associated with it.
Is that Lucido?
That's Mr. Lucido, who's an old mentor of mine, right? And I look up and I'm like, I'd like to have a couple of different bells. You realize that if Keller Williams had a bell for every time a real estate agent joined us, you'd hear the chime over 6,000 times a month, right? Yeah, you realize that if you had a bell every time that we closed a deal, you'd have like almost 1.3 million of them. We have to remove all the bells because no one could hear themselves think. Not a problem a lot of our competitors have.
Right. That's
I really got off Jesse because I had that ADHD moment where I had to ask Jason or tell Jason something and I would have forgotten. So Jesse, go ahead. Finish that question.
Thank you. My real question. Your internet is funky too, by the way, Nick. I'm just pointing that out to you. It's doing that Nick Baldwin internet thing. Okay, so we talk about you in our market center all the time. You're head of industry. What does that mean? What does that mean? What's the mission for Jason Abrams?
We made it up, the whole industry title, right? Because leadership knows no title, right? And I was here for the first, 6 or 7 months without a title. And then you look up and you say, okay, well, you got to be called something. And then people like the three of us say, well, why? What's right? How about just Jason Abrams? And they say, well, you got to find cohorts because at all these different companies, there's all these different divisions. And so when you reach out to talk to your counterpart at Facebook, who do you talk to? And I thought that was a great question. So the idea of industry came up. The way that the social platforms think of industry, it's the two highly considered purchases. And they call them highly considered because people will take all this time to think about it. Like no one spends 3 to 7 years thinking about where they're going to have dinner. And so that's not highly considered. But they do that with automobiles and real estate. And so we don't sell automobiles here yet, but we talk about houses. And so I spend all my time helping everyone in this building better understand what's actually happening in the street. Because here's the truth of it. we have the most amazing, I think, technologists and course writers and coaches and all of these different things here. But a lot of them are building products that they're not actually going to use in their personal lives. Meaning, if we made coffee here, everyone would have an opinion. They'd say, this one doesn't taste great, or this one should have notes of chocolate, or too bold, or too blonde, because we'd be drinking it all day. But because you could spend 5 months building out a piece of technology to help agents better on a listing appointment, but then they're not going to go on a listing appointment, the people that built it, how do you make sure that they understand all of those things and the nuances? So I get to run around here and talk real estate all day long.
I love that.
It's interesting that you brought that up about how the technologists at KW, they're never going to use what they're building. And, that goes for not every industry. I mean, like you said, we're not building cars. You're not building, some, blenders or whatever, things that you're using every day in your life, right? I couldn't think of anything better than a blender, by the way.
I know, which by hashtag, no one's used one in a long time.
I use blenders. They just evolved to like the bullet one, and
that's the difference.
Yeah. What I was going to say was that is the difference between what you guys are doing with the tech and some of the other guys, whereas you have all of us to consult with around what we want. Now we're seeing other companies hiring consultants, realtor consultants, right? Maybe one or two. And I would assume that when you have 160, 180,000 consultants all wanting different things, how do you decide what you build?
Well, we don't. Our agents do, right? So if you go to ideas.kw.com, you'll see that those things get voted up. But the truth is, and I'll take the Pepsi challenge against any of them. We're the only real estate company that has a bunch of realtors sitting around at International trying to help figure out how to make things better for realtors.
That is true.
I don't know like a ton of companies where you have just hardcore real estate agents that get to be close to the top of it. And I really dig that.
It's so much, it's more than that too. It's our leadership and education. So like leadership had an understanding of this, right? So now our MCTTs are in book clubs about the MREA. Like my awesome MCTT Diana is going to be getting licensed. Like they understand from a high level, that's leadership, and our education, it's still a big part of it.
Yeah, the truth is, it's not two conversations, right? And the minute we bifurcate this thing, we lose. If we're going to talk technology and then we're going to talk real estate, like that's just not how anybody is experiencing the world anymore. And I think there used to be a time when people would compare experiences to like experiences. They would say, the last time I dealt with a real estate agent, blank, and this time that I'm dealing with a real estate agent, blank plus or blank minus. I don't think that's how the world works anymore. I think that you're being compared constantly to the last technological experience that the consumer had. So if I order a pizza last night from Domino's and I have a better feel for when it's going to show up, then I know when I'm going to get the keys to my new house. In that moment, we lost as an industry. Mm-hmm. And I run around in circles where all day long, everybody wants to compare brokerage house to brokerage house. And I think it's adorable. I really do. The problem with it is that, well, I'm running around and Gary's running around and Mark King is running around. We're trying to have a conversation about the consumer. Like the minute that you look up at your calendar and realize that you spend less time talking about the consumer than you do talking about other real estate companies that you may be jealous of, which happens to us a lot, that's when you know that your days are limited. Because the consumer always gets what they want. And let us never forget, the real estate agent is there to make the consumer's life better. Mm-hmm. So that's the conversation. By the way, if we don't have that as an industry, I promise you the consumer is having it with each other.
The moment I decided I needed to track where my pizza was the moment I decided I needed to go on a diet.
I love the dinner bell, though.
I love that. Whether you're tracking your pizza or whether you're going on a diet, the thing that I love about it is that these are all moments that never mattered before. Right? Like there's this idea around other industries. They call it the moments that matter. And they get in a room and they say, what are the most important moments to the consumer? But then there's this other group of humans that say, well, what are the moments that don't matter? Because the truth is, from the minute you ordered your pizza to the minute that it showed up at your house, that never mattered. No. Now it's actually a differentiator between pizza companies. And so I would urge every agent, what are the moments that don't matter in your business right now?
Great
And then
question.
realize that it's in the moments that don't matter that you find the micro experiences that end up changing the way the consumer perceives you. And that should be so freeing.
Yeah, I was reading a book called No Filter, I guess a biography. If you could write a biography about a company, it would be about Instagram, and from its inception to being acquired by Facebook. And in that book, it talks about how a lot of the things that we have now in terms of tech on our phone, on our computer, are things that we didn't even really need, right? And then when they give them to us, we're like, whoa, I needed that. And you didn't even think twice about whether you actually did. And it's really interesting the way that technology companies are kind of like influencing the way we think and everything that we do by giving us stuff that we were perfectly fine without before. You know what I mean?
The truth is that, and if you go back far enough, these smartphones, it wasn't catching on. Like, I know today you look up and you're like, I can't live without it, right? I love the IG, whatever.
Well, where'd Jessie go? It's okay. She must have dropped
the
it.
reality is that when they launched these things, they weren't catching on. And I want you to think back, because I was part of the diehard BlackBerry group. And I was like, I like the key, and they weren't catching on. And so what happened? Because there's this really large group of consumers. And this group of consumers really decides where the market goes, just simply based on population trends at the time. And this was the baby boomers. And the truth of it was they weren't looking at their cell phone to do things other than make calls. And they kept coming out with apps, and no one cared. And then, and we joke about it now, Nick, but they came out with the magical app. It was the flashlight app.
Oh, yes, I remember. Yeah.
The reason that changed everything is because this same group of humans has this terrible affliction because they can't read menus in restaurants. It's really sad. And so in that moment, it was the first time that they used their phone to solve a problem other than making a phone call. And in that moment, they started looking at their phone differently. Like my dad, who's not like the most technically savvy guy in the world, he would say to my mom in a restaurant, because she had a smartphone and he didn't, he'd say, give me the device. And then she'd hand him the phone, and he'd just use it as a flashlight. And that worked. And then they were like, oh my gosh, what else can this thing solve? Now, by the way, just to catch you up, that group, those baby boomers, they download more apps than any other group.
Yeah.
Probably because they can't remember what they're for after they download it. But I joke because I'm a member. But the truth is, humans have always been on the search for tools. You can go all the way back to the initial tool, which was just a stick, and then you can see how it evolved. And as soon as the phone became an accepted tool, then people do what we do, which is we say, oh my gosh, how many tools can I have in the toolbox? When we talk about this idea of platform, ask yourself the question, if you didn't have your cell phone, how many apps would you be using on a daily basis? And then you look up and say, well, I don't know. And I say, well, yeah, where would you carry them? Like, you'd have to go get a whole new Louis bag for your apps. And how would you plug that in? And in that moment, we realize the power of the platform, so that anybody that comes to you and says, our company has figured it out, we have the platform of choice, then you get to look up and actually ask whether that resonates with you and whether it's real or not. I would tell you the jury's still out.
Very thankful for my smartphone right now too, which saved me back on us. It was not your fault, Nick. It was mine. It was my internet's fault.
I hear my internet's better. People were texting me telling me my internet's better.
Way better. I'm not even on the internet on my computer anymore. So
many people say you have the best internet, Nick.
Oh, thank you. Thank you
so much. Thank you.
I've got to ask you about the consulting conversations. So we know now, in getting in conversations with agents, those of us that lived, ate, slept, and breathed those awesome recordings until we learned them, that the conversations weave in and out of each other when we're consulting real estate agents. So where do you start?
Yeah, by the way, I think the same answer is for a real estate agent. I think if I was hosting an office meeting this week and I was talking to real estate agents, I would be standing up and I would be asking them to give me the needs analysis by which they give to their customers so that they understand where these people are in their life journey. And I would tell you that the essence of all relationship begins with true trust. And the only way to have trust is to have the three pieces of the equation: logic, empathy, and authenticity. And the only way to have that is to do a true needs analysis. The reality is that the needs analysis in all sales, and by the way, when I think of sales, I think of helping and loving people. Daniel Pink wrote a great book, To Sell Is Love. We've been doing it since the dawn of time. But if you're going to do it effectively, you're going to have to know what the consumer needs. It's in the moments that you fill a need by which you become irreplaceable. And so the worst sales are the ones that don't solve a problem. You know the difference between a bad sale and a good sale. Good sales are the ones that solve problems so well you don't have to sell it. Meaning, I never got a phone call. It was weird because Netflix never cold called me. I was expecting to do, and I felt really left out of the group. But they never called and said, "Jason, do we have an offering for you, sir?" That didn't happen because the sale was so good because they had filled a need that I had in my life. I ran to them. And so I asked the question, how often are you mastering your needs analysis? And if you truly mastered it at a large enough scale, you would know exactly what company you need to be over the next 5 years, such that you'd have 100% of the real estate agents at it. It's funny because I'll hear from our competitors and everybody wants to tout that they're crushing it or that they're the next thing. And I simply look up and say, okay, forgetting the fact that more real estate agents choose to affiliate with Keller Williams than any other real estate company on the planet. Let's just put that aside because everyone's tired of talking about it. Answer this. If you really had the answer that was so good, then how come you don't have 1.5 million agents at your brand? That moment, we all get to realize that whether you have 200,000 agents or 5,000 agents, we're all on the same quest. And that quest isn't over. As a matter of fact, I would tell you, we are at the infant stage of that game.
You said something super interesting a few minutes ago about how, was it baby boomers are download more apps than anybody? Is that what you said?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because one of the objections I get a lot from agents around tech is, my clients, they're not techie at all. They would never download my app, or they would never use that, or whatever the case may be. And I always say to them, you know what? My 100, and she's gonna be 102 this month. My 102-year-old grandmother had to learn how to use Zoom last year so she could talk to me and her other grandchildren. And if my 101-year-old grandmother can log into Zoom, your 65-year-old client knows how to look for homes on their phone.
You can do it.
Don't underestimate you're insulting them by saying that, because I know they know how to use them. What do you say when agents are so narrow-minded around tech because they don't want to get caught up in it, so they just put that on their clients? We hear that a lot.
Yeah. To be truthful with you, I stopped trying to talk them out of it. I mean, you do you. If you have the client base that's decided to stop evolving from a technological basis and you're happy with the business that you have, I love that. I think you should go all in and then wake up every day and hope that it doesn't change. If you choose to use hope as a strategy, then you're far more trusting than I am. I have a hard time with it. And the way that I think about it, and I've been saying it for years, and it's such a simplistic view of the world, but unless you've made the decision to take your clothes down to the stream and beat them clean, then you are a tech person. You've just decided to use a washing machine. And in that moment, I'm really clear. It's not that you're not a tech person. It's not that your client isn't a tech person. It's that you don't think your client is a new tech person, meaning they like to use the tech that they like to use. And I could list all of those things, but they choose to drive in a car. They choose to use a washing machine. They choose to use a dishwasher in large part. They choose to sometimes fly an airplane. So they like tech that they get. Your challenge, if you wanted to accept it, would be, what could I come up with such that they would choose to learn how to use it? And by the way, you may say, I'm not really down for that. And here's the thing, depending on where you are in your life's mission and your business's growth and maturity, not doing anything may be an okay strategy. Never forget that sitting still is always a powerful move. It just might not be powerful for a change agent, but doing nothing is sometimes the best thing to do. I would argue that you might not know your clients as well as you think you do. And I would simply ask the question, when was the last time you actually called them and asked them what they're using? Ask them about their personal tech stack. Send out a survey. I think that the supermajority of realtors and the supermajority, by the way, of team leaders and OPs, we walk around thinking that we really understand our target market and the people we're in business with. But if you are unwilling to look up and realize that the world is changing so fast that it's impossible for you to actually understand it, you'd start asking a hell of a lot more questions.
Around those questions, that's really my question. You're telling a story recently Jason, about counseling a couple of real estate agents that were thinking about getting into this together, and you asked them an interesting question: when are you planning on taking vacation? And said one of them said 2 months or something like that, and the other one looked at him like, "What are you going to do for 2 months?" What other important questions? We run into that all the time, especially now. People wanting to team up or join up in some way. And what are the other interesting questions that we're not thinking about, that we're not asking, that we need to be asking?
First of all, there's no wrong question. I'm sure that you guys know them all. The one that, and I kind of break it into 3 cohorts. If you have an existing business and people are flying and they're printing money and life is great, I always simply ask, on a scale of 1 to 10, how happy are you? If 10's the happiest, and I'm constantly amazed of the answers that I get. Because the truth is, once you pass a certain income level, happiness quotient doesn't really change. There's an amazing study on this. Yet we all walk around and think because somebody sells X number of houses or makes X amount of dollars, they're either A, unrecruitable, or B, they're living a big life. I mean to tell you, what happens more often than not is people look up and say, I have all these resources and I'm still no happier than I was. And it's in that moment that we get to change the world. That's that group. Then you have the group in the middle who doesn't have that yet. And for that group, I ask a really, really simple question, which is, as you look up over the next year, how do you think you're going to double the amount of money you're making? And they want to talk about everything else. And I always say, I totally understand. But here's the thing. You still think you're chasing the almighty dollar. And by the way, you won't change your mind until you catch it. And so I think what you're asking me to do is help you run a mile faster. That's what I'm good at. So how do you think you're going to make your money? And then I'll tell you what I think. And then group number 1, which is the new agent that's coming in. And for that group, I always ask the same thing. What do you love to do that you're not doing a lot of right now? What's your absolute hobby? If I said to you that you were independently, what would you do today? And then take golf. I have this there. I would be golfing every day. I'm like, great. Call it lead generation. Do it for 3 strangers. Only golf with 3 strangers. Do it 3 days a week. You're going to add 9 new people to your data bank. By the end of the year, you will have added 450, and you're going to look good in white pants and a pink belt. I know it.
See, I like that you brought that up, because earlier you talked about cold calling, and I have my opinions on not my opinions on cold calling. I just know where that business model, being your only business model, is going, right? Because you and I were having a conversation last week about where that's going. And then we talked about where texting is going, right? It might be going the way of spam email. So you always have to be, rethinking the way you're generating business. And I was never a cold caller, because if I'm not having fun doing it, I'm not going to do it. There's no reason why I can't have fun in sales. There's no reason why I can't have fun trying to get that business. And so, like, to real estate agents, when I ask, do you prospect? They go, oh, I don't cold call. I go, I didn't ask you if you cold call. I asked you if you prospected. Why is prospecting a 4-letter word in real estate? You just said, go out there and golf, go to the playground. You know how many clients I picked up at the playground with my kids? It's all prospecting. Just have conversations.
It's so right. If the internet has taught us anything, it's that no matter what you're into, there's another group of people into the same thing, no matter how weird and splintered you are. And I love that because there's just not that many things to do. And anything you want to do, you can do with others. I used to tell the story about this woman who loved playing tennis. And so she literally started a tennis community. And, she's still in business. She's in Georgia. And she now has, I think it's like 100 women that play tennis 3 times a week. And then she literally started a shopping club because she loves shopping. So her and a group, she goes to the mall at like 10 o'clock in the morning when they open on a Wednesday. The only people there are her and the walkers and her little group that show up, and they all have Starbucks, and then they go shop for an hour, and then they come back and show each other what they bought. And yeah, that sounds like the 7th circle of hell to me, but she loves it. And the shopping group love it. And by the way, they want to then do business with her. And I look up and I find that so freeing. Look, we all get into an industry where we can literally do anything we want, and we're our own bosses. And then somehow we convince ourselves we have to do one of 8 things that we don't like. And I think that's totally asinine.
Mm-hmm. There's a exercise that your MAPS coach can do with you. Mine did it recently, called the values exercise, and it'll help you.
Who's your MAPS coach?
Susan Ventners.
Shout out. Love that.
Awesome. Best in the world. And she did this exercise with me, and it points us towards where we're spending our time. course, where we spend our time is what we value, right? And so if your lead generation, it seems like if your lead generation isn't centered around something that you love and value, why would you do it? That sounds awful.
Oh my gosh. There's literally a place where you can go and they'll have you do a bunch of things you don't like. It's called prison. They'll make you, by the way. That wasn't supposed to be what this thing of ours is. And I
enjoy making license plates.
And I have the same issue because I talk to team leaders all the time too. And I have the same issue there because I always say, well, what's your favorite thing? If you were going to be reincarnated as something else, what would you do? And I get these, some of them say I'd be a party planner, or I would, they have all of these exciting things. And I say, great. Why aren't you throwing 3 happy hours a week? Like, I'll never forget, I was a team leader and I would throw these parking lot parties because my office shared a parking lot with the largest company of gold jacket wearing folks in my marketplace. And it's like literally shared a parking lot. And every Friday I would throw these parking lot parties. And then I would simply, by Monday, there was always someone who was carrying their little box of stuff across the parking lot. The coolest day ever, by the way, was when that building went into default and we bought it out of short sale and everyone got to go and take their old offices back when we moved over.
I didn't move to Michigan soon enough for those parking lot parties, unfortunately.
They were epic. By the way, what else would a 21-year-old team leader do? That was the only skill I had.
I think I gotta start that back up again in this region.
I need to know, what are you listening to? What are you reading, Jason?
What am I listening to and what am I reading? I'm going to give you the worst answer.
Okay.
I don't usually just like willy-nilly look for things to listen and read to. Like I'm usually trying to solve a problem and I'm looking for a solution. And every 90 days, one of the greatest parts about being in business with Gary Keller, pretty much every 90 days, a stack of books gets delivered. And it's pretty much understood that you're going to have a book report on each of them. Like that's just part of it. And it happened my first 3 days. Like I think on my 3rd day, I was in his office and he was like, here, read this. And it was like this. And so I'm always in the middle of 5 to 10 different books. I try to do 6 to 10, 15-minute sessions a day. And so right now, and for me, that's really doable. And if you add up the math on that, that's really doable for everybody. And you can absolutely fly through it. So I don't know. I have a stack here that I'm reading. The one that I woke up today and started reading was The Tao of Pooh and Piglet.
Oh, yeah. I know that book.
This was a gift to me, so I'm reading that a lot.
I had a question about your thoughts on the real estate market with the insanity going on right now. You know, the lack of inventory, more realtors in America than houses for sale. You know how, and I have seen that there's one of two things happening. Realtors are having their worst year ever or they're having their best year ever. I don't see any in between, right? You've got agents selling tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of homes. And then you have agents that just cannot get that business. And what do you think is going on in the market and why there was such 2020, obviously there was more inventory. Why is there so much less inventory now? And what can we do to kind of like break through?
Well, they call it a K-shaped recovery in economics, which means one group goes up and one group goes down. So what you have in the real estate business right now, and you articulated it so well, Nick, you have a K-shaped chart. And as leaders, our job, we have to look up and try to figure out how to bring everybody up, right? And that's really hard. I'm going to answer it in 3 groups: for real estate agents, for consumers, and then for everybody watching. And you say, well, what is that group? That's this amazingly large group of people that gets left out of both of those things. For real estate agents, if you look up and you're not having your best year ever, then newsflash, it's on you. And I know that sucks, and that's the worst thing you could ever want to say, but you have to do something different before you're ever going to have even remotely close to a different result. And I know that you look up and it seems like, oh my gosh, what should I do? Just one thing. Here, I'll make this so easy for you. CNBC did a poll the other day. 64% of the people that own houses don't know what those homes are worth. period. Now, directionally, they know they're worth more, right? It went up. That's such a useless piece of information for somebody. Meaning you have 64% of the populace walking around with a winning lotto ticket in their pocket, but no one scratched it for them. So they don't know if they won $2, if they won $3 million. And so instead, they just keep doing the same thing every day. Here's what they need. They need it to be a unique insight. So every single day, if all you did was wake up and ask the question, how many people today did I tell them what their home is worth, what they owe on it, here's how much you'd net if you sell it? If that's the only thing you did all day long, you would have a phenomenal year. Because if you did that at scale all day long, everyone you spoke to would end up in 3 buckets. The group that says, oh my gosh, that's more money than I thought, and they would think about pulling the cash register. The second group would say, that's exactly what I thought, and then you'd say, great, what else is going on in your life? And you'd be in a relationship. And the third group is the group that said, oh my gosh, I had no idea. And that's the group that you would have started a new fiduciary cadence with. Because here's the thing, the market's going to change. It just does. And when it does, everybody who was surprised at how high that number was, they're the first ones that come off the fence. And if you're not in relationship with them now, you will miss out on the next market cycle. And so that's how I would answer it for a real estate agent.
So I think it's this, the fact that 64% of homeowners don't know what their house is worth. What I would suggest to everyone watching right now is just send complimentary market analysis to your sphere of influence. Start doing that. Just say, hey, the market is really great right now. You might not know what your home is worth. I just wanted to give you an idea of what's happening. And like, just send that information. Don't ask, hey, do you want to know your home value? Just send it. Put it in the mail. Send it FedEx so you know they get it. Make it nice and beautiful. Because if 64% don't know and you send it to 10 people, right? There's 6 people there. Maybe you'll get 1 or 2 listings from that. You just do that every day for a month and see what happens. You know?
100%. So that's how I would answer it to agents. To homeowners, here's what you asked me why I think the market condition is what the market. I think rates have a lot to do with it. Like the truth is when you can borrow $1 million and have a $4,000 a month payment, like I feel like everyone I know is spending $1 million. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, I'm not there yet. Like that's an amazing thing. I think you will see, Janet Yellen said the other day that she thinks that rates going up would actually be good for the country. And I don't understand necessarily all the math there. Suffice it to say that as rates go up, prices usually come down. And as rates go up, markets tend to cool off. That's number one. Number two, we can talk about the fact all day long that there's not enough inventory, but just understand it isn't like there's considerably that many more sales or that few sales happening. We're still right on track.
Okay.
By the way, the worst year ever, 4.6 million sales. That was during the Great Recession. The best year, 6.4. By the way, we're right in the middle still. So like we can wake up and we can say to ourselves, there's no inventory. And yeah, I get it. That feels true. The truth is none of us are creating any more sales. There's not less sales happening. The difference is who's getting their piece of it. And then for everybody that's sitting it out and kind of watching, I think that is the greatest opportunity for our industry. We have entire economic dead zones. We have areas that have been overlooked, and you know these things. And when you look up and see social injustice happening, I think you have to run towards that. Meaning helping somebody buy a house. Look, renting a piece of America is great, but owning a piece is a hell of a lot better. We know this. Helping someone become the first homeowner in their family or the next homeowner in their family is massively important. And then on the same token, anyone that you talk to that's underemployed, that's someone who should be a real estate agent. And if you're not out there teaching the virtues of home ownership on Mondays and teaching how to become a realtor on Tuesday and rinse and repeat on Wednesday and Thursday, and then simply loving life Friday, I don't know what the hell you're doing.
Ding. I'd add a ding to that.
Is that a ding? Is that a mic drop?
That
ding,
is.
ding.
I'd add a ding to it.
By the way, it's not mine. That's Gary Keller.
Okay.
He said that to me the other day, and I was like,
I'll create the meme and say, Jason didn't say this, just came out of his mouth, and Gary really said it. Awesome. Well, I know that you have 1 minute left. Jesse, I hope you have a really good hard-hitting question because I'm going to let you ask it. Or maybe Jason wants to leave us with some words of wisdom.
Hard-hitting, Jesse. What do you got?
I'm sure both. What are you dying to tell us that I'm not asking you? What did I not ask that you absolutely need to say?
Oh, I got a question. I don't remember which country it was, but I was just asked to speak. I don't remember which country, but here's what they said. They said, looking back on the career, if you were going to say that there's any one thing that you wish you would have known at the beginning that you know now, what would that thing be?
Mm-hmm.
And I'll tell you what, I thought that it was a brilliant question. And the time I answered it poorly. Having reflected on it now since, I think what I would have liked to have said is that we all say all the time that relationships are the currency of Keller Williams and that relationships are where the wealth are. It's such an easy thing to say, but it's such a difficult thing to live. And I wish I would have understood the difference between the two. Meaning, it's one thing to wake up and rationalize how important relationship is. It's another thing to wake up and then ask the question, does my calendar match that realization? And I am constantly asking myself, how am I showing up with the people that are expecting me to be there? And the truth is, and if all of you want to run from this, then maybe you're just better than I am, and I'm willing to accept that. But you guys have massive organizational charts, 350, 200, 500, 1,000 real estate agents. Your agents have the exact same thing in their databases. Now look up and ask the question, am I honoring that number of relationships? And I know the answer is not. And that's something that we have to tackle. Because if you ask the other question, which is if I found out that my number 7 agent in my office had dinner with my number 1 competitor last night, how would I feel about the last 60 days of my relationship with that agent? If you woke up every day and asked that, yeah, you'd make yourself sick every day, but you'd be a heck of a lot closer. That's what I think.
That's awesome. I love it. Jesse, from a team leader perspective, that's pretty powerful.
It's huge. It's huge. Yeah. You love your people first. And they'll help you.
That's the terrifying question, because you have to wake up every day and say, who can I bring in that I want to be in business with? That can't come at the expense of asking the question, who am I already in business with, and am I making their life better?
Yeah. So good. Jason, always a pleasure to have you here and to chat and to, listen to what's on your mind. I know that it all comes out like a water hose. There's always things that you're thinking. So it's awesome that you're able to chat with us this morning. Now you got to go run a company. So appreciate you.
The good news is here, the company runs everybody always thinks that you've become the single point of failure in every relationship. It turns out more often than not, you're not. That should blow your mind this morning.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for watching. We had a huge crowd watching today. Appreciate it. Have an amazing Monday. Hope this helped you kick off your week. I know it helped me. We'll see you on Wednesday. Bye, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.